Live from the glorious city of Melbourne
and live from the USA,
your superstar hosts, Michael Sopel.
I'm going to say we play and win a final.
Sam Manhannett.
The top four.
Like it.
Carlton.
There it is. There it is. I was waiting for it.
This is In the Ballpark.
Hello and welcome to another edition of In the Ballpark. I'm, of course, Sam Manhannett, joined by Michael Sopel from San Diego for another thrilling episode of In the Ballpark, where we dissect and delve into the world of footy. And boy, do we have another big round ahead already. And it's only round 4. They are flying through these weeks. I don't know about you, Michael, but footy seems to fly past too quickly sometimes.
It really does, Sammy. Thank you for having me, and hello, audience out there, wherever you're listening from. Gosh, another huge week of Aussie rules football. My gosh, Sammy, it is all happening too. Like, I just feel like every week there is another massive headline, and there are teams under the pump, and there are teams really putting their credentials out there and say, hey, we're ready for the big stage. And who knows, Sammy, as we will discuss very soon, that stage might be getting extended out to October. We will see, but plenty to talk about, mate. I tell you what, we love the footy, and already round 4, it's wild.
Starting off on a sad note, another legend has gone from the footy world. Andrew Krakouer has passed away earlier this week. What are some of your memories from Andrew Krakouer over the years, and especially the early 20s, early 2010s, early 2000s?
Yeah, I honestly, I'll be honest with you, I don't remember when he first was on the scene as a Richmond player, back where they had, I think, Motorola as their sponsor on the sash. And then he came back in 2011, a time where the Collingwood Football Club was in a really strong position. Of course, we talk about succession plans in footy. They were trying their own with Nathan Buckley going into the hot seat, but there was this live wire forward trying to re-spark his football career, and that was, of course, Nathan Krakouer. And my gosh, Sam, in that 2011 season in particular, I just remember how dominant he was, and I kept thinking to myself, how can an already really strong team like Collingwood just get stronger and stronger? And that's by the inclusion of him. That as a neutral supporter, you just supported him because he was just so electric. I think Richo, who was obviously a teammate of his when he was at Richmond, he said it was like the football had a handle on it. He was just so clean, and he just did remarkable things. And he really lived up to that Krakouer name as well, because, that name is synonymous with great Indigenous players in our game, and just an incredible intuition about where the goals are at all times. And, yeah, he was just an electric player at his absolute best, and, someone who, was just a really modest, really humble roll-up-your-sleeves type guy. And, yeah, he definitely, to have that second chance at it, reminds me a lot of what Tyson Stengel has kind of done recently, where it didn't quite work out at Adelaide, but he came over to Geelong and won a premiership. Of course, that 2011 side went very deep, Sam. They couldn't quite get the chocolates on the last day in September, but that was a very dream run for them, and certainly Andrew Krakouer was a big part of that. So it's a massive loss to the football world, and it's just a really, I guess, a real reminder of just how fragile life is, and just, 1 minute they're here, 1 minute they're gone. So I'm sure his memory will continue to be honoured by the footy world in the coming weeks. And some very fond memories of him for sure.
Yep, 137 games with a total of 152 goals over a career, starting at Richmond, as you mentioned, 2001 to 2007, and 2011 to 2013 at Collingwood. So some memories there from Andrew Krakouer. Okay, next in the lineup of news stories today, I just wanted to scratch on Melbourne fans. Now, I know it's a rough period Melbourne are going through, and we will get to them later on in the show, but their attendance last week at the MCG, a nice, perfect Saturday afternoon, inexcusable. I think it was just reportedly about 22,000, but it looked a lot less than that against the Gold Coast Suns at the MCG. So poor showing from them. So interesting though. It's always seems to be the way with the Demons. They'll have these patches where the crowds just aren't there, because I don't know if they're off skiing in the mountains. But maybe they should consider thinking about maybe holding some games at Casey Fields if they can't keep up with their attendance, because it does look really bad in otherwise a record-breaking attendance for the AFL, which is very ironic.
It is, Sam. And honestly, when the MCG is empty and there's good footy being played, although you could probably argue the standard of footy in that particular game wasn't quite there, particularly from the Demons. So clearly the supporters do have a little bit of an inkling maybe how the team's going, and that might, I guess, contribute to how many fans show up. But in good times and in bad, as a fan group, you got to get down and support your players. And there's nothing like when your team has momentum and they're trying to chase down a big total and you've got just that extra bit of overwhelming numbers in that stadium cheering your team on. It can just give the players a lift. I think the players would agree too that it's that 23rd, 24th player is the fans that bring that noise and energy. And honestly, on Saturday, it was like a Sheffield Shield game. It was just so quiet.
So, well, they're definitely going to need some fans down at GMHBA on Friday night. We will get to that later on. Speaking of stadium, Marvel Stadium. Now, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago how hot it was I think it was round one when I went in there. The second time I've been in there for Carlton Bulldogs last week, again, was pretty warm. I just think, what is the problem with opening the roof at night? Just open the roof. The amount of times I've been there for concerts and Socceroos games and things like that, where the roof has been open on a nice night. It's beautiful. I think there's just something, I don't know, not suffocating, but it's just, when you open the roof to that, it does make the ground feel bigger in some way. And I'm sure the players will agree that the playing conditions with the roof shut and a night time and it being still warm is not good. So I really think they should have no problem opening it at night with the roof. I know there's still some concerns with daytime, with the sun and the way it looks on TV. I understand that, but if it's a nice night, open the roof. I don't see why that's a problem. Now, is there many stadiums that has roofs over there in the UK? The US that.
I'm not hugely. Yeah, look. Definitely in the Marvel perspective, yeah, definitely it's common sense. I mean, we've had issues in the past with certain games, as you said, broadcasters, the sun hitting players in the faces on certain angles and certain wings and flanks being a bit darker than others. And, there's been random rainstorms that have came in on a seemingly perfect day in Melbourne, and that's created some issues as well. But these are real conditions, and so players should be pretty adaptable to all of these situations. But at night, I completely agree, Sam. If the weather is looking relatively clear, open up the roof, stop the suffocating. If they're worried about noise, then bring enough fans down. 45,000 will still, or 40,000 will definitely still make noise, even if the roof's open. I mean, we've been at the MCG before, and the atmosphere's electric. I know 80,000 is a lot more, but even still,
it's a good point too, because. There have been a lot of residential, but when Coldplay have played there, the roof's been open, and concerts are much louder than a footy game, I would say.
Isn't it just implied that if you're buying an apartment near Docklands, you're going to get noise? Well, come on.
Again, that requires common sense for the people who buy it and want to live there. But right.
And then also they would feel a bit shortchanged if you have this great view of the stadium and you can't see anything in there, you know.
Yeah, I see a lot of advertisements from apartments using that as their promotion, and you're just looking at a concrete hot box down there with the lid shut. Anyway, so Marvel Stadium, just open the roof. The AFL have got full control of this ground now, so I don't know why. Yeah. Anyway,
but Sam, what I will quickly say is you did ask about stadiums here in the US having open and closed roofs. I think you could kind of make an argument for a lot of the ones sort of on the East Coast, particularly, you know, in football stadiums where they have a lot of snow, you know, places like Philadelphia and Buffalo. I think they're kind of starting to create some more heating options inside of those stadiums, particularly in those really negative conditions. But I still look at Buffalo and it's like, as long as they can kind of clear that surface, even if it is heavy snow during a game, as long as the fans aren't getting affected, because there's a lot of times, particularly in Buffalo, where you'll see the seats are just covered in snow, and so the fans, when they get in, they actually have to like shovel the snow away. I mean, they're just so passionate. Like they nearly fill that stadium every single time they play, particularly during playoffs when it is colder, and yet they still get fans in there. But I think there are going to be innovations in that space. And you look at SoFi Stadium, a stadium that I've been to, and they've actually got great ventilation. Sort of like it's quite an open stadium with the different levels, so you can actually walk in and out of the conditions, yet the actual roof itself is closed. It's like this, it's almost like a sunroof. It's like this glass, or I don't know what it's made out of, but it's clear. So you get natural light because the roof is sort of somewhat opaque. And then, you still have that natural ventilation coming through the other entrances, which it kind of looks like the new Vegas stadium for the baseball is going to be like. And even the initial images of the Tasmanian stadium look a bit like that too. So clearly they've learnt from Marvel not having that natural airflow coming in, and it's been a real issue, as you've seen.
Well, but in that sense too, they probably wouldn't have the wings, because we've just got that weird rectangle where it's just the kind of a massive vent that we open up. Anyway, but it's, interesting one. All right. Finals in October. The conversation has come up again to another idea from Eddie Maguire has hit the waves for potential finals in October. And having extended preseason with State of Origin, and then another reason for pushing the finals in October is that we could have a grand final at night time, but it's okay because daylight savings are going to be there. What do you think about that, Michael? I feel like we have this conversation every year.
We do. It's pretty radical, isn't it? Like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, honestly, in my opinion, Sam. Yeah. I don't know. Finals, pushing it all the way out to October. The only positive that I would say with having it in October is I do like the slightly later start to the season. There's obviously extreme heat in a lot of places in Australia, and although there's a part of me that does enjoy going to the MCG when it's a little bit warm and watching the footy, you've got to factor in the players and their health and well-being. And I don't know if some of the injury toll in the preseason and not having a big enough runway into the regular season has maybe prompted the conversation, as well as just trying to be overly over the top. And I know the AFL has had a history of, you know, kind of being somewhat influenced by, you know, the American sports, where you have, you know, these massive, you know, finals and playoff campaigns that allow the players to be really cherry ripe for them, and also these all-star weekends. The ironic thing about, I think, the suggestion of the State of Origin was, and remind me, Sam, if this is correct, it was like later in the season, or was it somewhere in the middle of the season, the State of Origin suggestion?
No, this was before.
Right. But in this October proposal for also it was going to be before the season, the State of Origin. See, I think I think that All-Star weekend, I know it's NBA, it's different, but that's typically in the middle of the season where the season starts to kind of lose a little bit of momentum because there's just so many games and maybe the stakes of some of the teams are a little bit lower. I mean, if you had the State of Origin like when the bye weekend was traditionally, that would be a little bit of an injection of energy into it. But at the very start of the season, it's too much of a high stake, I feel.
Yeah, but I would feel the coaches and clubs would be less likely to give up their players mid-season.
Right, that's fair. The other thing is it would be interesting if they actually brought in a mid-season trade deadline. That would make the State of Origin really interesting. But the thing that I will say on the State of Origin, I think there was a former football player in the media, I can't remember who it was, but they mentioned that State of Origin's kind of changed its meaning a little bit because traditionally it would be like you'd go to these teams that weren't playing in South Australia every second or third week or even never played in South Australia or never played in Western Australia. Like that was their opportunity to play at those stadiums or primarily Victorian clubs that had players from other states had the opportunity to represent their state. Now that the competition is Australia-wide, Sam, and there's Victorian teams travelling to all these different places around Australia, that the necessity for these places to see different players come to their grounds and play is just not the same demand because it's just now just a novelty. So it's kind of, that novelty is kind of worn off a lot. And I guess the big question is there still relevance for a State of Origin? I personally, I like it. I like the nostalgia that comes with it, but does it have to be every year? I don't necessarily think it needs to be. It could be like a once every 3 years where certain crop of players get the opportunity to be the best in their states, but
get selected.
Get selected. But I mean, we've already got a State of Origin, I guess, with like the drafting, right? Like a lot of those younger players are playing against each other to try and get drafted. So there is a little bit of it already happening, but I don't know if it's fully necessary.
Okay. All right.
What's your opinion on it though, Sam? Do you like it?
I guess it's something that us as young people have missed out on. And so I would like to see in some sort of pre-season form. I think that's the only way that it'll work. Right. So it would be nice to have something like that, or even in that that bye between the end of the season, you could have players from the bottom 8 or something like that playing in something. I don't mind that just to fill that weekend. But will they want to play that? Are we just putting in players for the sake of it? Then But it does make for an interesting pre-season, a really exciting way to start the year. I don't know. I guess it's worth for the AFL a deep dive into it and see what they can do with it.
And Sam, a grand final in October. Do you agree with that proposal, or do you think just keep it where it is? I can see you shaking your head.
It's the last day in September. It should always
can't
be
change
the
the songs
in September. No.
Can't do it.
I mean, I know we've had to do it a couple of years just out of necessity, but September finals is a tradition. And it just seems like another sneaky attempt just so they can get the night grand final over the line.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And also, Sam, like I would be up for the AFL taking it back to 22 rounds. I know it's a bit of a controversial opinion, but you get opening round right with every team playing, and you have maybe just one big bye weekend where you might get some curtain raisers, which could be the State of Origin. I know we love more footy, but I think there is a fear that you might be losing some quality somewhere in the middle there. And if you can replace it with some curtain raisers and still finish the season towards the back end of September instead of going all the way into like mid to late October, I think that might be that's just at least my opinion of like make it more high quality.
Or just have a split round in the middle.
Right. Yep.
And not be having buys
True.
This early in the season. Very
Agreed.
exciting. Okay, we better get to the footy now. Round 4 is upon us, and we start off with a huge one. Tonight, as recording Thursday night, Collingwood and Carlton at the MCG. And Michael, we previewed this game and this fixture many times over the last couple of seasons, and it just gets bigger and bigger every season. There's always something interesting going into this. Collingwood fresh off a bye, off a okay start for them. And the Blues, on the other hand, still without a win. There's only 3 clubs at the moment without a win, and Carlton is one of them. I think West Coast is one. And who's the other one?
Melbourne, yeah.
Melbourne, yes. So, I mean, these games are high stakes, even when we're 17th and 18th. These are still high stakes. But I just feel there's a certain kind of pressure with the Blues fans, and I feel like if we lose this one, the season is slipping away. And I don't want to put the knife in the season yet, and I want to go to the round next week. Excited. I'm going to go 8 hours in a car without a win would be something. So I think this is a big opportunity in front of a big crowd to get some momentum back. And wouldn't it be a way to kickstart the season? Because it's I don't know. What are your thoughts? It's the classic rivalry.
Right. It's such a good rivalry. I mean, I'd like to think Essendon, Collingwood, when you throw Essendon into some of those big Victorian rivals, that there is a reaction. And don't worry, there's some great history there, but there is truly nothing like Carlton and Collingwood. The hatred, the visceral feelings, they're just so pure. They dig deep into the core of both sides. That you love to hate Collingwood, you love to hate Carlton if you're a Pie supporter, and the stage is always so big, even when, as you said, when both clubs are cellar dwelling, and they have been, don't worry, there's been plenty of times where they've both been having a lick of the bottom ice cream, but I tell you what, when both teams are up and about and the MCG is rocking, it is something else. And the last couple of years, Sam, these have been, correct me if I'm wrong, relatively close games too. So there's a lot on the line for this particular one. And Sam, I just want to ask you the question, as a Carlton supporter, you follow the team so closely. You've got so much pride in that jumper. Tell me, there's been some lean times for Carlton, but you've shown that over the last couple of years, your very best is one of the best in the competition. Have you been that far off it this season? Is it true what Vossi has been saying in his press conferences around losing some key moments here or there, or do you think there is some systemic issues within the structure of the game that really needs tweaking, or do you think it is a quick fix and just a little bit of belief is needed for this team?
Well, belief's always an important thing, but I think in this ever-changing game, and how even the competition is, I think it can look probably worse for wear when maybe it's not. And that season where we got to the finals for the first time, that wasn't squeaky clean. I think it's rare to have a really good clean record. We seen the Lions, who won the flag last year, had a shaky start. So. Look, I think it only just takes a couple of things to get right. And frustratingly, I think the Blues played a really decent game against the Bulldogs last week and then just couldn't finish it out. So I think there's just a few minor tweaks and things just to fall into place. And once they do, belief is a powerful thing. And so wouldn't it be a way to get real started for that? A couple of the changes for the teams, looking at Collingwood first, Frampton and Mychek come back in, Mason Cox and Reef McGuinness out. 3 changes for the Blues, Ashton Moyer, Cooper Lord and Will White. A debut comes in, plays first game.
Walter's son.
Walter's son. Oh, my God.
Great name.
I'm just going to move on. Matthew Cottrell out with injury. Jordan Boyd omitted and Francis Evan omitted. Excited to see Ashton Moyer come in.
You've been calling for this for a few weeks, Sammy.
Yes. He kicked a great goal in the VFL a couple of weekends ago, and got his opportunity late in the season last year, and proved as a sub he can come on and be exciting. So I think what a great round to bring in some young, fresh blood into an exciting, because often sometimes you throw in a kid at a big stage like this, they can do some wild things. And
Makes or breaks them, Sammy.
Yeah, and these are the sort of the moments that we need to win, because in games against Collingwood, it can come down to that. We've seen McGovern last year. That still sticks in my mind.
Never looked good off the boot, did it?
No, so it's going to be a nerve-wracking
Jamie Elliott,
time.
yeah, there's been some.
So stay tuned to the In the Ballpark Instagram. You'll be able to see my nervous self at the G this weekend, and you get a week off with the bye this weekend, Michael, so you can...
Thank God, Sammy.
But the pressure...
Go to the bye with a win, I'm happy. But what I will say on the Dons, though, the kind of lift that we got from Saad Al-Wadi, I know we mentioned it in the last last podcast recording, but... You know, these young players, and Richmond, dare I say it, Sammy, got that in round one against you guys, just that little bit of youthful exuberance coming onto the ground. It really lifts the team. A player's first AFL goal just gets the team up and about. I still remember Sam Doherty when he kicked that first goal after coming back from that big setback, and how that lifted the team and just really added some energy into that game against the Tigers. So there's a lot that can be said about bringing in some younger players and just adding more energy to that team, and just, you know, I think it does lift the rest of the side. So, you know, I'd love to see that happen.
Dynamic.
Yep.
Do you think we can get up?
Well, I've tipped the Blues in all the games.
Yes, I know. Looking at my tipping competition, I did have a few family members reach out. Hey, look, the only family member that does an AFL footy podcast is on the bottom of the ladder. So, so it's not been a great start.
No, it has not. But look, I'm going to tip the Pies in this, because that probably means the Blues will win. So there you go, Sammy. Can't trust my tips.
We've got to win this. It's a must win. I think with a win off like this, we can turn things around. But if it's going to get deeper, 4-0, then it gets a bit more of a deeper conversation. But yeah, Pies, classic rivalry.
Love it.
Nervous already.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Friday night football. It's Geelong and Melbourne from GMHBA Stadium. And wow, throwing down to Friday night, GMHBA recently redeveloped. The Demons have had some horror stories over down there for many years. And in recent times, some close big games there as well. But the moment that sticks out to me is that giant scoreline that sticks in my brain from Melbourne's dark days. But
220, whatever it was, like 220 points was like 246 the Cats kicked or something. Like that was wild, Sammy.
They are having some dark days at the moment. And they need to turn things around. Geelong are playing pretty decently after a slight slip up to St Kilda, and then a tough wet outing at the Gabba last weekend. I don't know really where I sit with this. Pressure's really, really on the Demons. They're probably will probably look, if they don't get a win out of this weekend, they're probably going to be the worst for wear out of all the teams with the bullet points on them. But interesting.
Yeah, I know throughout the week it's, you know, the Demons have been the pressure cooker team. It was Essendon last week, and, you know, obviously once they respond, the narrative completely shifts. That's the AFL media for you, Sammy. That's why we love it and hate it at the same time. But the D's have been understandably under pressure this week because they played so well against the Giants not to get that victory. And we just kind of expected that they would continue to play in that kind of nature, but it was almost like the air had just came out of the tyres over the last 2 weeks, back-to-back 10-goal losses, and you're just kind of a bit stunned that they've sort of served this up. It's not like they lack in effort or desire. It's maybe this selfishness that might be starting to seep in ever so slightly. I know Jordan Lewis really highlighted it recently that they're not giving that extra handball or two that allows them to set up play a little bit better. So there's just a couple of those, a bit like Carlton, those couple of easy fix things that if you can get that right, you can create momentum for your side, because the worst thing is you hate to see players fighting against themselves and squabbling, going, hey, give that handball. Hey, I was open. It's one of the worst looks in footy because it's a team that is disharmonious. And so if the D's can get back to their DNA, and that's just hard contested football, and that's playing as a team, it doesn't have to be pretty, Sam, and it probably won't be, let's be real. But if they can just get back to that intensity and that selflessness, then They may not win this game, but they'll at least look a lot better, and they'll be better for it in the long run because they aren't a bottom four team at their best, Sammy. We know that. They only won the premiership, in 2021, so we know what they're capable of. Max Gawn's in career best form again, and they've got enough to like in that list, but yeah, they've really got to lift. There's a lot of pressure on them this week, but it is a hard road trip.
At one stage, a couple of seasons ago, they had one of the best midfielders. It was all about Melbourne's midfield.
Right.
And it just, they've kind of lost their wave with it. So I hope for their sake they can get it back and get things. But will they go and I guess this is a good way to face their demons going down to GMH. I am going to tip Geelong though. I think they've been playing all right this season, and they'll want to get another home win locked away.
Yeah, a week's a long time in footy, so I am wary of what the D's could potentially dish up and make Geelong look particularly second rate like what St Kilda did. But it's a hard road trip, Sammy, and for that particular reason alone, I'm going to tip the Cats. They were really good last week not to get the victory against Geelong against Brisbane. They played themselves against Brisbane, so. Yeah, obviously that was that postponed game from opening round, and it looked like Brisbane have really found their game style. But I'm going to tip Geelong in this one, Sammy. Simple as that.
All right, Saturday afternoon at People First Stadium, 1:20 p.m. The Gold Coast Suns host the Adelaide Crows. What an exciting fixture. One of the most look forward to matches of the round, I would say.
Sammy, how often does this happen where two informed teams that we're like they need to play another contending side come up against each other? I was actually hoping after the last round that these two teams would be playing each other. When I saw the fixture, I'm like, yes, this is it, mate.
Well, I was going to say that Adelaide, as good as they've been going, I was saying to someone that they've not really been that tested yet with some of their opponents. So I think this is a perfect opportunity to go up against a in-form hot Gold Coast Suns. So they're playing better than their jumper looks. Let's just say that.
Can I quickly say on the jumper, Sammy? It was April Fool's yesterday here in the United States. They posted a photo of Took Miller with a all yellow jumper on it because, of course, Gold Coast were making fun of all the comments around, hey, we see your weirdly same coloured top. Why don't you have the yellow? And they brought the yellow back, but and it was, you should have read the comments, the amount of people going, joke's on you, Gold Coast. It actually looks better than your current one. And I think scrap it all. Wear that this weekend, embrace it. How quickly can you pump out those?
Well, they are Gold Coast Suns after all.
Hello.
And they put in the week. I'd seen an advertiser for a job up there for a graphic designer. So
shout out, Sammy.
I don't know if they're panicking. But enough about the off-field performance. Their on-field performance is fantastic so far. And is this a team that we could be seeing play their first finals for the first time? Wouldn't that be exciting?
It would be. And the hope is that a club like this in future, when they start playing better like they have, I mean, they haven't put together a full season, and that's my biggest hold on them is, can they do this away from Melbourne consistently? But I mean, get them on the MCG more often, Sammy. I know they don't have a big supporter base, and they're not going to fill that stadium, but just to get those players playing on the MCG, I mean, they clearly proved that they can play that stadium. And Matt Rao, oh my gosh, I don't remember him being this good since that very first game against the West Coast Eagles where he burst onto the scene. That guy isn't just like a man mountain, but he's got some serious toe. The way that he ran away from Clayton Oliver, incredible. That was one of the best games I've seen him play. And, the fact that he's playing alongside one of his, his high school mates in Noah Anderson, and they're just all connected in that midfield. They are seriously scary. Sam Flanders is another really good player. Bailey Humphries. I mean, they've just got so much depth, and when they do that at the MCG, all of a sudden the rest of the AFL world kind of wakes up and goes, "Wow, we've got a serious side here." And
Sleeping
Damien Hardwick, mate, I tell you what, as I said, they don't want for much. But, this is a real test this weekend. I mean, we questioned whether they are a good road team, and clearly they've shown that they can play on the road. But, I mean, Adelaide are the other informed team of the competition, and this is just a succulent matchup. Isaac Rankin against his old side too. I love the narratives all around the ground, and, this is going to be a cracker, Sammy.
I'm going with the Suns just because it's up home up there. They're going to create a bit of a Gabba-like fortress, I think, maybe at their home ground this year. So excited what we're going to see from them. But definitely Adelaide will give them a crack. But excited for that one.
Very excited for that one. I agree. I'm going to tip the Suns in this one.
4:15 on Saturday afternoon, the MCG. Richmond host the Brisbane Lions. First outing for the Lions at the G since they won the flag. And Richmond, another big walloping weekend for them prior to St Kilda. And then a good win in the wet against Geelong, a second half kind of turnaround when things dried out at the Gabba. So they're going all right, the Lions.
Yeah, Sammy, my word. I mean, look, Brisbane have done what they needed to do. They've just been winning ugly and just been getting the 4 points. They were a bit of a storyline at this time last year for the fact that they just were off, and everyone questioned whether they were about to fall off the edge. So many finals appearances and just falling ever so short, and, whether the front was going to fall out, but no, they've been seriously impressive to just continue to back up, and it just means it gives them the liberty with some of their older players that they can rest them, come mid to late season, and they can really dictate terms. And yeah, I saw a funny stat during this week, Sammy, that the Brisbane Lions have not bet Brisbane at the MCG since 2009. And I was like, wow, yeah. Brisbane have not beaten Richmond at the MCG since 2009. There's a photo of John O'Brien with his fist up, and I'm like, wow. So that's interesting. Of course, Brisbane did come to the MCG a few times during, the Tigers era, and there were some close games there. I think Brisbane were leading at certain times, but the Tigers found a way. So I don't think they'll have the same issue this time round. So this could be a bit of a drought breaker. But, I mean, the Tigers, after that round one victory, they've just been playing one half of football the last couple of weeks. And, they looked okay against St Kilda in the first half. But as I said, in the second half, they just were just not quite there with the legs to run out the game. So you suspect that this is going to be the case for the Tigers for the majority of the season. But you wouldn't want to be taking it lightly if you're Brisbane, let's put it that way. But I think the Brisbane should win this pretty comfortably, Sammy boy.
Yep, Brisbane for me. Saturday night, Marvel Stadium, 7:35. North Melbourne hosts the Sydney Swans on a night game. Very exciting.
I like it.
And thinking back to last year, I think North Melbourne have a decent record against the Swans at Marvel. Been a few close ones, and then remember back to, some North fans would be angry about the interchange decision last year that kind of cost them the game at the end. That will be properly in their minds. So I think North will be giving them a real crack, but I think Sydney are going to be too strong.
I'm going to tip North in an upset here. I thought they were really good against Adelaide and they just kind of fell out of form just towards the end of that game. Home crowd in Adelaide, real tough. But you talk about fortresses, Sam. You want to make Marvel Stadium a fortress. And, if you're North Melbourne, you're thinking to yourself, Sydney coming off a bye, what a good time to get them. And as you said, that close record that they've had, some of those games easily could have went the other way where the Swans are in, far better form with much more cattle. But I've really liked North this year. I think, they've had some lapses, which is going to happen. And the big query was out on them whether they could actually win games of footy. Did they have that belief? And they showed against a pretty disappointing Melbourne that they can. So I'm really fascinated by this game, Sam. I am going to tip North in it. I can't believe I'm doing it. But I just think the Luke Parker effect, he knows this team very well. He was only there last season. I reckon he'd almost be like an assistant coach this week. And, hey, I want you, Charlie Cobden, to really, nullify the performance of some of the key forwards. He knows all the intricacies. Honestly, I think that might help him a little bit.
And an opportunity to host a night game, I think it's very good.
It's great.
Krakouer is definitely going to use that as a bit of fuel.
Pull out the guitar, I reckon, the electric guitar.
All right, we move on to Sunday. Sunday, 1:10 p.m. It's the GWS Giants hosting the West Coast Eagles at NG Stadium. Another impressive start for the Giants. They're looking really nice as well. Really good effort against the Hawks. Just got beaten in Tasmania, a bit too tough for them. And then the Eagles. Wow, the bookies have got the Eagles at $11.50 for this one. Look, not the greatest start of the year for them. There's not much we can say about this game other than I think the Giants will win pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I think so, Sam. I think it was kind of a question of how well a particular team could take advantage of the conditions down in Tasmania. And in the end, the Hawks really took full advantage of that. I still cannot believe Will Day kicked that ball and it just did a full swing into the goals. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's a wild kick from possibly outside 60 that he kicked that ball from. I think he was trying to set it up at the top of the goal square and it just went through like that. But no, look, there's no concerns for me in the Giants. And, it's interesting. We talk about the Adelaide Gold Coast game and that's two teams that have shown their credentials so far coming up against each other and really solidifying that. And, after that loss, the Giants' first loss of the season, they get a bit of an easy kill, to be honest, Sam. So it's sometimes it can go the other way where you're sort of imagine if the Giants had Geelong this week. Wouldn't that be, a rip snorter of a game? But instead they get the Eagles. But yeah, for those Eagle fans listening, I mean, that was definitely a good opportunity last week to potentially get the Dockers when they were vulnerable, but in the end weren't able to do it. And I think it'll be one of those seasons, Sam, although they've shown little bits here and there, there's a lot of rebuilding to go. I mean, there's a lot of missing pieces in that team that they need to still get. So, yeah, hopefully time will be good to them, but I think Giants in this one.
But moving on to Adelaide Oval, 3:20 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Port Adelaide host St Kilda. Interesting one. Now, I feel like they've had a few close games here in recent times, and I think Port have been very dominant in this fixture, and Saints would be trying to win against the grain with that one. And after some horror couple of weeks for Port Adelaide, a win at their home ground just before Gather Round kicks off next weekend would be a nice way to kind of steady the ship a little bit. But I dare say St Kilda have been playing pretty dominant couple of weeks. A lot better than we probably predicted pre-season. So this is going to be a cracker game, I think.
I think so too, Sam. And my dad, who's a big St Kilda supporter, he always reminds me, even when St Kilda were ultra dominant sort of in that 2010 period, the Power were always that kind of bogey team for them. They were always close games, or sometimes they would pip them. And of course, there's that, what was it, that famous prelim or semi-final where you've got Kane Corns on the siren kind of falling to his knees, and the Saints not quite winning in that one. I think Robert Harvey might be in the background in that particular image. But yeah, there's been some blowouts in recent memory, particularly St Kilda being on the receiving end of those. But this is a great opportunity for St Kilda to really prove that they're actually better than a lot of us had predicted. I mean, beating Geelong is impressive, but I mean, gosh, to beat Port Adelaide at home when they're under a lot of pressure,
yeah,
I think would be a huge statement win. And I mean, Ross the boss, I mean, we know what he's capable of, so it wouldn't surprise me. But I agree, Sam. I think Port, off a really disappointing performance against the Dons, a real last quarter fade off. I mean, they were right in that game, and they just weren't hungry enough for it. And so, you know, I imagine it would be a pretty hard week on the training track for them. So I'm expecting a big performance from the Power, big response.
Yep, I'm tipping the Power at home. Moving on, the last game of the round, 5:10 p.m, Optus Stadium. Fremantle host the Western Bulldogs, and with a bit of a modern rivalry. I know we say a lot the Dogs and GWS, but I would say because I think that elimination final a couple of years ago, they've had some hairy ones down there. So really interesting, and Fremantle will be a bit upset the way that things finished with that close one against the Swans last weekend. And I'm not convinced with the Bulldogs as of yet. I know they've been playing very well without their stocks, but I could see Fremantle winning this one at home.
Yeah, I think you know, obviously a settling win for the Dockers, their first of the season against their arch nemesis West Coast, but have they really proven it against good opposition? As you mentioned there with the Sydney Swans game, they were right in that, but that was a must win for them to really showcase their credentials. I mean, they've been definitely the disappointment of the early part of the season so far. I mean, we had them finishing very high, and there's still a big chunk of the season to go. But if they align with that particular prediction, Sammy, they win this game, and they win it by a bit against the Dogs. I mean, the Dogs have been really impressive, as you've mentioned, and a bit like St Kilda, you know, when players are out of the side and you've got, you know, some really good coaching, it's incredible what kind of talent you can uncover, and that's what the Dogs have done. Davidson's been a real player for them, and Fraser and Tom Liberatore, you know, the old dog with new tricks. You know, he's just been brilliant. So, no, look, I think Fremantle will win, but you know, the Rory Lobb factor playing against his old side and some of the spite that's went into that in the past. I love that as a little curtain raiser too, Sammy. So I think this is going to be a good game.
Am I being too harsh on the Dogs? Do you think?
Oh, look, I think they've been really impressive this season, and you know, their away record, they galvanise a little bit, so it wouldn't surprise me, Sammy. But yeah, gosh, I mean, it'll be fascinating to see when they get some of their guns back, what they'll be able to do, because once they get them back, they'll be expecting to, you know, be competing with some of the best teams in the comp. So will that actually eventuate? You got to win these games if it's to be.
Okay, and
Fremantle
Essendon and Hawthorn have the bye, so that is round 4 of the AFL. We've got some crackers already ahead before an exciting gather round next week. So exciting round of footy ahead, Michael.
Sammy, I'm so keen. Just quickly, Oscar Allen met with Hawthorn this week. really quickly want to touch on that. It's the captain of the football club. I know it's happened in the past with Ryan Griffin and going over the Giants, but what do you make of it? I mean, he's their captain at probably one of the lowest ebbs in their career. I don't blame the guy for looking at his options, but if you're the captain of the club and you're like a for real captain and you're eyeballing your team and you're asking them to lift, I mean, if I was a teammate, I'd just be going, F off, mate. Like you're interviewing with other clubs. I mean, do you just, if you're West Coast, are you just taking the captaincy away from him, or are you just being really respectful and a little bit, sensitive with this?
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky one. I mean, it's not a great look, but it does happen. It does happen. Probably more than we think, and it's. I don't think it's a good look, but it does happen in our game, and he stupidly has gotten caught doing it, and it's not a great look as a captain. I don't know. It's a tricky one. You've really stumped me to finish this off.
I did, didn't I?
Nick Riewoldt suggested the other night, I heard him say that our transfer window is the time when these kind of things are appropriate. And now is probably not the time mid-season, which I can agree with. But I think it's always going to happen unless you can penalise it or find a way. What would you think about a rule being put in place?
Ooh. It's a juicy thing. It would be a little bit hard to police, but I mean, if it was found out, I mean, do clubs get a fine? Do they then have to give up more when the trade period actually comes around and they've got that player on the targets? I'm not sure how you would police it, but again, I don't think it's a great look for both parties, to be honest. But just one thing on Sam Mitchell, I got to say credit to him for putting it out there and trying to get what he wants. I mean, he did it well with Barras. He obviously did it well getting Battle, and he got pretty close, I think, with Ben Mackay, and maybe in the end he probably dodged a bullet there. But I mean, it's just they're right in the window, aren't they, Sammy? And it's a bold move, and maybe you've got to be not so liked in this process to get what you want, and that's clearly what they're doing. It's bold, but it could end up being beautiful.
All right, well, that's in the ballpark, and I hope we've covered it. Our tips are somewhere in the ballpark, I'd say, for the first couple of weeks. But I hope you've enjoyed. Stay up to date on social media across all our profiles, and we'll be back here next week to preview a massive gather round in Adelaide. So thank you for listening.
For all your news, reviews and previews this AFL season,
Listen to In the Ballpark. Download the podcast now.